He began his career in stand-up before going on to appear in a range of television and radio productions, including the Radio 4 sitcom 15 Stories High, where he played a dour and sardonic recluse.
See, I love talking to myself. It's very... that's it, really. You don't have to finish your sentences off. I can leave long gaps while I think of something to say. I'll be halfway through an argument with myself and think, I'm a bit peckish, finish it off later.
He later became a regular face on panel shows like 8 out of 10 Cats.
What would you like your obituary to say?
I don't care. I'll be dead. But ideally, I'd like it just to say, no! Why? No! You can't write tears, Jimmy.
Mark Lamarr was a long-time collaborator of Sean's.
He was so funny. I mean, that's why we're talking about him. We're not talking about him as a humanitarian or any of those things. He was just funny, and he was funny from day one. I remember when he started doing comedy, and, you know, comics, we see 4 comics a night, every night of the week for years and years and years. And for one to stand out, they really have to be very special. And Sean was very special from the beginning to the end. He had a different comic mind to anyone I'd ever met. And he maintained that for what is it, nearly 40 years, is it? 30? I don't know. It's a long time. It's a long time of being funny.
I mean, comedy goes through trends and changes, doesn't it? And different styles. I suppose he was so sort of down to earth, wasn't he? Really classless.
Yeah, he was, but I think it was just that he had a different twist on things. And I've written and worked with all sorts of comedians for all sorts of years. And Sean was one of the few that would always surprise you. He just had a different, normally with a comic, even a great one, you can sit there and go, well, yeah, I know how he got there. I know where he's going next. You can work that out when you've been in that business. But with Sean, he would just endlessly delight. And I'm not saying this because he's just passed. That was Sean's great strength. He doesn't think like other comics. And that's quite a thing.
Where did he get that creativity from? I mean, the lightning wit and a kind of absurdist almost take on humour and comedy, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I think Sean was by nature the most contrarian human being I've ever met. And you could be wearing a pair of white trousers and Sean would convince you they were blue. He was just, he was very argumentative, very contrarian. If everyone said they loved something, he would hate it. If everyone hated it, he would love it. That was just, that led to lots of bickering with lots of people over the years. But I think even then, people were still... a really good comic doesn't come along that often. Me and Sean actually wrote a film, which was largely Sean's doing, called Red Squirrels, which was all about essentially the grey squirrels taking over what were the rare and true breed. And Sean was a red squirrel through and through. He wasn't a bland comic. He wasn't a comic like any other comic. Yeah, he really was a red squirrel, and presumably that's why he wrote it in the first place.
He made that work on TV look so easy, like it just strolled on, making us laugh, thinking things up on the spot. But how hard was he working at it behind the scenes? You wrote with him, you worked with him behind the scenes as well as on screen. How did he manage that?
Yeah, well, we wrote a lot of each other's stand up over the years, and you manage it by sitting in a room for 8 hours a day and staring at each other and hating each other for 7 hours and 45 minutes and for 15 minutes laughing so hard at each other that it's worth it. And that's you shouldn't really show the workings. And as he's not with us anymore, it doesn't really matter. But that's the skill of it. The skill is to write for 8 hours and then say to everyone, hey, I've just thought of 15 minutes of really funny things. And no, he was a real grafter, Sean. I mean, I think for years he wasn't, for years he was he was almost the secret comic on the comedy circuit that all the comics loved, and we'd all go out and watch him when he was on, and all the other comics, you do a bill with 4 comics, you sit in the dressing room all night. But when Sean was on, you would go out and have a look. And for years, he was just the comic's favourite comic, and he couldn't work out why he wasn't getting anywhere. And we were saying, because you don't put any work in. And honestly, from that day on, he would graft and graft and graft. When we wrote the movie together, he would send me film scripts at 3 a.m. that he'd just been working all night on and stuff. No, I mean, it's great that no one notices, and that's how good he was.
Mark Lamarr, remembering his friend Sean Locke. Got news coming up in just a moment, but let's hear first about tomorrow morning.